On today's show, the Hawks go into Charlotte and blast the Hornets with their first blowout win in quite some time. We'll get into all of what transpired, how it broke down, and much more, and all that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1933 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. Today's show is brought to you by the folks at Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app right now and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. And when you get there, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup at Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show to make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. You can find us on Apple and on Spotify, as well as on YouTube. So please like the video as you are watching it there. And crucially, help us to spread the word by telling your friends and family, colleagues, etc., about the podcast. I'd be very appreciative of that level of support. And today's show, we'll be diving into a very good night for the Hawks. 134-102 victory on the road in Charlotte. The Hawks sweep the Hornets this year. Actually, in previous years, the Hawks have struggled a little bit against the Hornets, but not this year. They took care of business for the first time in a decade, plus sweeping the Hornets across the board for the season. And in this game, it was pretty much cruise control from halftime onward. It was competitive in the first half. The Hawks were winning most of the night, but in fact, the entire night. But it was not like blowout fashion until the middle of the third quarter. But from that point forward, it was pretty much garbage time for at least a full quarter in this game, which is obviously very nice. And by the way, the first time the Hawks have blown anyone out like this in 2025. It was last time I did this was like in late December. So a nice kind of rocking chair win for the Hawks. You love to see that, especially after what happened on Sunday. So if you missed it on the podcast, I did a full episode that you should still click on or download or listen to about what I thought was a pretty bad and frustrating loss on Sunday. And then I sort of expanded on that a little bit more on Monday in a mailbag show that's, by the way, still very relevant right now as well. But all that said, some of the sour taste from Sunday is wiped away by this game. Doesn't make everything great. Obviously, that was a rough night. But what you need to do after a performance like that is go out and win a game and play very well. And just to say this out loud, the Hornets, in their form that they were in on Tuesday, are very bad. This is a bad team that was also missing two of its top three players. So it isn't like you throw a parade for beating Charlotte. I'm not saying that by any means. But the Hawks did not just beat them. They walloped them in this game. And all you can do is beat the team in front of you. That's the thing about the NBA. Like, a win is a win is a win. There are all kinds of jokes about March basketball in the NBA. Weird stuff happens in March. Bad stuff happens in March. It's kind of the doldrums for the NBA in some respects. But what you want to do is go win games, hopefully win them comfortably. No one played more than 31 minutes in this game, which is a good thing for the Hawks moving forward. All positive, good vibes, good stuff on the way there for the Hawks. So the lead thing here is that the Hawks won the game comfortably, but it was really a pretty much a tremendously dominant offensive performance in this game. One more time, I'll give the caveat, bad opponent. I get it. I've said it. Now we'll move on. But this is actually the most efficient offensive game of the season for the Hawks by the numbers. They had a 135 offensive rate. That's 1.35 points every possession on the offensive end of the floor. That's a new season high for the Hawks. It was actually well over 1.4 until the fourth quarter. At one point in the middle of the third quarter, it was over 1.5. The Hawks were carving up the Hornets early and often. Even in the first half, when it was more competitive, it was not because of the offense. They were cooking on offense all night long. And the numbers showed that throughout the game, as well as the eye test, honestly. It was a top 5 shooting efficiency game this year for the Hawks. 67% true shooting is obviously super elite. That's great there. They were pretty good inside the arc, 58%. That's not special, but they were special from three. So a new season high for the Hawks with 22 threes. And yes, I got a question about this already. Would it be nice to kind of save some of those for later? Yes, but you can't do that necessarily. And part of that was Charlotte, but still a season high with 22 makes. Also, second highest percentage of the year from three at 49%. They didn't need all of those. If the Hawks had just shot like regularly from three in this game, they still would have won pretty comfortably. But it was kind of the way to pour it on a little bit was to make a bunch of threes. And basically everyone other than Moge, and I guess you can argue V. Krejci, shot the ball well in this game. Garrison Matthews made an appearance with 2 threes. George Niang hit 2 threes. Terrence Mann hit 2 threes. 5 for Risacher, 5 for Trae, 3 for Okongwu, by the way, tying his career high. So it was equal opportunity. It was a barrage for the Hawks offensively and with their shooting in this game. Also, They only had 11 turnovers, and that's very impressive. Even against a bad opponent, take care of the ball like that is, winning the margins is very helpful no matter what happens. And the Hawks were able to do that on the glass and in the turnover margin in this game. Essentially, there was nothing wrong with the offense for most of the night. There was one swoon with a bench group in the first half when it was like they kind of just couldn't get anything going with that, Man, Barlow lineup. But other than that, it was pretty much smooth sailing offensively and a pretty impressive night on that end of the floor. I will say, defensively in the first half, as we'll probably get into a little bit more later on, I didn't love the way they played in the first half. Like, they were letting the Hornets get way too many easy buckets. That bench group was struggling defensively. And the Hawks were winning, but they were not playing great defensively, other than forcing turnovers, which they did do in this game a lot. They had 17 takeaways in the game, including 12 steals. Some of that's Dyson, of course, but they were pretty opportunistic against Charlotte. But everything else was just okay. But I will say this, they clamped down after halftime. They did stiffen. They did kind of ramp things up to put the game away, basically, in that third quarter. So credit to them on that. They weren't special, but they were just fine. And that led to, again, a comfortable result. There's plenty to get into about this game. I'm not someone who comes on and just wants to just all right, here's what it is. Blowout win, move on. That's the takeaway in some respects. You want to win the game. And again, the Hawks now are only up by one game in the Southeast. They're still actually up a game now after this. If they had lost this game, it would be tied with Orlando. But, there was stuff I didn't love along the way. Rotationally, there was some weirdness with Risacher in the first half we'll talk about later on. There's always nuance and context. And there's a reason why I watch every game twice before I do the podcast. I watch all the way to the end, even with garbage time in this game. But the Hawks were down a lot of guys. Obviously, they were in better shape roster-wise than Charlotte was. But to go out there and leave no doubt was encouraging. And by the way, after this, spoiler alert, the Hawks don't play again until Saturday. So going into a 3-day hiatus with good vibes, when you're going to have some practices, some time to get right physically, having that be a good win on the road and probably an early night to get back from the airport, etc. It's all positive. What you did not want to do was let Sunday beat you again. And by the way, this team this year has been resilient, but they have had a couple times this year where they've lost to the same opponent or to a similarly bad opponent twice in a row, where the first game kind of lets you beat them in the second game. This time, there was none of that. They bounced back. They held serve. They won by a lot. And that is the top line of this podcast. We will, however, get into more of the details, my own notes, observations, etc. later on in the show. And then at the end of the podcast, we'll touch on a little bit of my player-by-player evaluations. First, though, a word from our partners on the podcast. This show is sponsored by Prizepicks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get on the action with Prizepicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prizepicks, you pick more or you pick less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win 1,000 times your cash. It is easy to use, available in more than 30 states, including Georgia, and they'll let you mix and match projections across different sports if you want to do that at Prizepicks as well. And this week, I'm looking at the board each and every day when it comes to the NBA, of course, plus college basketball, baseball, NHL, soccer, MMA, and so much more. Plus, they have all kinds of other sports, including football, NASCAR, F1, golf, tennis, and every sport, honestly, on the radar. And they have Prizepicks to make it simple as well. So it's just a minute or less and stay engaged all game or all season long. And when you win, you're going to hit your account in just as little as 15 minutes with no waiting around whatsoever. And also every Tuesday, you actually have Prizepicks discounts on select player projections of 25%, giving you even more value to your lineups. And you can download the Prizepicks app today. And when you get there, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. If you do that, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prizepicks. That code is LOCKEDONNBA. $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game. Today's show is sponsored by Hungryroot. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've had this ongoing problem for a long time now. I just don't have the time, quite honestly. Between work and life and trying to eat healthy, I really felt stressed out at times. And I go to the grocery store, buy things I actually didn't want or didn't need, and then end up with no time to actually make them or cook them. And sticking to health goals was a struggle as well. But everything changed when I actually discovered Hungryroot. Honestly, it's been a game changer for me when it comes to eating healthy, and there's no expense involved whatsoever. With Hungryroot, it's like having a personal shopper and nutritionist all in one. They take care of my grocery shopping, recommendations on meals and groceries based on my taste and health goals, and all kinds of different diets if you want to do that as well. And the best part, every meal is ready 15 minutes or less. 15 minutes or less. It's very fast and convenient. I'm talking quick, healthy meals. It tastes great as well, all delivered straight to your door. It's been a huge time saver for me, and it's also made eating healthy much, much simpler and easier for me. And you're going to love Hungryroot as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. And if you do that, that's just obviously even a perk beyond what you're already getting at Hungryroot. The place to go is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the promo code LockedOnNBA when you get there. One more time, that is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA with that code LockedOnNBA. 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Check it out today at Hungryroot. All right, we'll dive in now to how this game kind of unfolded, and the Hawks did take a 20-7 lead out of the gate. So they actually never trailed. Now, it doesn't mean they never played poorly for a stretch, but they were up by 13 points pretty quickly in this game. They played with great pace at the outset, which I was encouraged by after the way that Sunday went. When they got a little bit bogged down, they were playing fast, they were playing aggressive, they were playing free-flowing, and you like to see that in this situation. Dyson was really good getting to the rim in this game. Also a couple threes early on from Okongwu, Risacher, Trae Young. They did cool off a little bit in the middle of the first quarter. In fact, they missed 9 of their next 12 shots after that big run, and they gave up an 18-6 run, and the lead was down to 1. That was the closest the game was the entire game, was in the middle of the first quarter when they had a little bit of a hiccup, probably their worst stretch of the game. Part of that, again, was the bench lineup. They did score the final 6 points of the quarter to go by 7 points, and the offense looked good, and they forced a bunch of turnovers defensively, but it was, other than that, not the best start, even though they were kind of in control. Then at the beginning of the second quarter, Trae had back-to-back turnovers in this game. At that point, he was actually really good the rest of the way. That was a really tough minute for Trae Young. And then Barlow kept fouling. It was kind of a rocky stretch. But I will say this, Dyson Daniels was doing Dyson Daniels stuff. He had 3 steals in 10 minutes. He made his first 5 shots, getting to the rim. Okongwu made, again, 3 threes in the first half. And they had a couple of rough defensive moments, but they slowly built the lead. So it was 1, then it was 5, then it was 7, and it was all the way up to 13 by halftime. And it felt like that was comfortable-ish because the offense was playing so well, and there was honestly no sign that Charlotte was going to stiffen. It would have taken the Hawks to really miss a lot of jump shots probably to have this game get away from them offensively. Before halftime, Trae, Dyson, and Okongwu had 15 points or more, and they shot the heck out of the ball before halftime. The only thing that was holding them back was the defense, which I alluded to earlier, was not particularly crisp. And again, the bench unit or units were not very effective. Even in this game overall, by the way, I'll just say this now. If you look at the plus minus, which is not always indicative of everything, the 5 starters were all plus 21 or better. And the 4 starters, they're like real starters, with apologies to Moge, who's kind of just in there playing a smaller role as a starter. Risacher, and then the top 3 of Trae, Okongwu, and Daniels were all plus 25 or better in this game. Whereas the bench, it was a little bit more mixed. In fact, Dom Barlow was -3 in a game they won by 32 points. Because, whenever Okongwu leaves the floor, things get a little bit worse for the Hawks right now. It's not Dom's fault entirely, just what it is. And Terrence Mann was not the best, I didn't think, either in the first half of this game. One thing I will note right now that I was certainly frustrated by is sort of a transition into the third quarter. So I'll be positive first. Coming out of halftime, Zaccharie Risacher had a personal run of back-to-back-to-back threes. So 3 consecutive threes to put the Hawks up by basically 20 points. That was a bit of funny synergy because I went into halftime like many Hawks fans did, and I was doing it in a more measured fashion as I usually tend to do. But I was pointing out my frustration with Risacher played 9 minutes in the first half, and I wasn't quite sure why. There was no foul trouble this time. I kind of made fun of that on Sunday's show, like there was this patina of foul trouble on Sunday, which doesn't really exist in my opinion. But this time there wasn't even that. He just didn't play very much in the first half. He was playing fine. They played too much Veet, I thought, and then too much man in the first half. And I pointed that out, as many did, going into halftime. Then Risacher was like, all right, I got this. Comes out, makes 3 threes in a row, and the Hawks are up by 20 points. That kickstarted a run of 30-8 overall by Atlanta to put the game away, basically. And I don't mean that flippantly. I don't usually say put the game away in the third quarter, but it was basically there by 35 at that point. It was functionally over. Risacher had 16 of those 30 points. He scored 16 points in 7 minutes. He was firing away from 3, getting to the rim. And I gave a stat a little bit more broadly earlier. But in the first 31 minutes of the game, the Hawks scored 96 points on 63 possessions. That's a 152 offensive rating for 2.5 quarters. So they were just doing everything they wanted to do offensively. The lead did go down to 26 by the end of the third quarter because the bench unit, again, the bench groups did not work very well. Particularly that unit with Mann, Krejci, Niang, and Barlow all together was not particularly effective in this game. But they made 8 threes in the quarter, and they were in total control. Fast forward a little bit to the fourth. Garrison Matthews actually checked in and played his most minutes in a long time. Obviously, it was all garbage time. He looked fine to me. He had not played. In fact, this is only the second time he's played real minutes in like 6 weeks, basically. There's a little bit of chippiness in the fourth quarter. Started with Don Barlow and Yusuf Nurkic getting into it a little bit. Trae was chirpy going at Nurkic, got a technical foul in the fourth. I think George Niang got one as well. It was a little bit choppy, but nothing that was terribly scary to me, just kind of notable in itself. I gave a stat earlier, I believe, but the Hawks have not had a blowout like this in a long time. It's been since December 29th that they've won a game by more than 16 points. So I give that caveat, but if you were a longtime listener, you will know that one of my slight pet peeves with Quinn is that the Hawks tend to leave their guys in too long in blowouts, in my opinion. And that means like their best players that don't need to like get more minutes put on them, more injury risk, all those things. And I thought it was a prime example of that in this game. Does it matter that much? No, but it's notable on this sicko podcast, obviously. The Hawks are up by 34 points going into a timeout with 7 minutes left. And I'm thinking, and I even said this on social media, surely that'll be it for Trae and Okongwu. And it was not. They stayed in the game after the timeout. Now, Trae only played about another minute. Okongwu like 2 minutes. So it wasn't like they played a ton more. But I just thought it was like, all right, guys, get those out. Please take them out of the game. No reason to have them keep playing at this point in time. There were a couple of like slight injury scares in the fourth quarter. Terrence Mann was hobbling around a little bit. So was Garrison after a sort of a high profile collision. But neither guy had to come out right away. They seemed to be fine, knock on wood. So no real disasters. And again, the cruise control nature of the fourth quarter, a 32-point victory after being up by as many as 36 in the fourth quarter. It was basically not competitive for the final 20 minutes of the game, which is, of course, nice. You know, no one had to be play big minutes. In fact, the guy who led the team in minutes tonight was Veet. So no one in the starting lineup other than Trae played more than 28 minutes. Trae was at 30. That's a nice kind of way to get into a break. I'm sure they'll be off tomorrow if I had to guess. Practice Thursday, something like that. But a nice way to kind of take care of business there for the Hawks. All right. I will get into some more details in a second when it comes to the player-by-player evaluations, and all that's coming up in just one moment. This show is sponsored by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That is over 8 times the national savings average. The perks for the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC. As of November 18th, 2024, Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, to the player-by-player evaluations in this game for the Hawks. And as you might expect, most of it was pretty positive in a blowout win. Garrison Matthews played 10 minutes. He actually was not in the rotation when it was competitive, but he played 10 minutes, hit 2 threes, had a block shot that was actually pretty impressive, had an assist and 2 rebounds. You know, Garrison looked fine to me. People always ask why he doesn't play more. It's not because he's bad. Garrison is a specialist for sure as a shooter, but he's a playable guy. It's just that the Hawks have guys ahead of him that they think are better, basically. They would rather play Veet. They'd rather play Terrence Mann, even Karis LeVert, who's out in this game, along with Capella. So that's all it is with Matthews. Like, there's no, he's not in the doghouse. It's just the way it's broken down. But he's always ready to come in and fire away, and he was in this game as well. Dom Barlow was better tonight for sure than he was on Sunday. I thought Dom struggled pretty badly on Sunday. But the Hawks are still a different team with Okongwu versus Barlow. And that's not going to change. I like Dom a lot. I think he's got a lot of talent that can be developed. But right now, he's just kind of a below average backup center. That's what he is. But again, they have Capella and Nance on this team. They're just not playing right now. So that's part of why he's out there. But he was more productive in this game. Ended up with 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, did have 4 fouls in 21 minutes, but was 6 of 10 from 2-point range, was totally fine offensively. Defensively, it was not the best. That's where he struggles a little bit, but I thought Don was fine-ish in this game. Niang was quiet, 6 points in 24 minutes, took only 4 shots. Defensively, the Barlow Niang combination is pretty rough, which is not hugely surprising, but I thought Niang was just fine with what he was out there doing. V was it was weird. V played a lot more than he probably should have played in this game. I thought he was fine, but V did 5 points in 31 minutes, 1 of 4 from the field, 2 assists, 4 rebounds, had a block. I just thought he played more than Risacher at times when that probably shouldn't have happened, but I thought V was okay. It just didn't make a ton of sense to me in the first half in particular. Terrence Mann, 22 minutes, had 12 points and 8 shots, so that was fine. 2 assists and a block. I thought he was not very good in the first half, was better after halftime, but still trying to figure out what they're doing with Mann overall, in the way that they're deploying him. Quinn tends to like the same lineups, he tends to keep groups together, but I don't really know the theory of the case for that bench group that has Veet, Mann, Niang, and Barlow on it, especially with Trae. I'm a fan of having Trae prop up units when you kind of have to do that, but defensively, there's not really a theory of the case for that 5 guys. They're not going to stop anybody with those 5 players. Now, they might score, and that would be helpful to kind of just keep things afloat. But that's not Mann's fault. It's just kind of when I wanted to bring it up on the podcast today. That's it for the bench guys. To the starters, Moge was the quietest of them. 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 of 5 from 3. Someone actually asked me during the game, and I'll relay that now, why they are letting quote unquote Moge shoot threes. And my answer is that they believe that he is good enough to take open threes. Now, I don't think they want Mo firing contested threes necessarily. And yes, if you go only on the points per possession on his attempts this year from 3, it is a quote-unquote bad shot. He's shooting 25% from 3 this year. The math on that's not good, obviously. They know that. He knows that. We all understand that. The Hawks think that he's better than that as a shooter. And also, there's something to be said for gravity. So if Mo Gay is at 3-point line and is not being guarded and then not shooting when he gets the ball, that hurts everybody else. That means your spacing's worse, etc. So I don't know what Mo Gay's true 3-point shooting baseline is. I think it's higher than he's made this year. But for now, the Hawks are clearly coaching him to shoot that shot. He's not just doing it on his own. I promise you that. The Hawks would just take him out of the game. If he kept firing shots that they didn't want him to shoot, they'd take him out. My example, this is an extreme one, but if Capella just started taking threes, the Hawks would not be taking kindly to that. Whereas Mo Gay is encouraged to shoot them. That's the difference there. So anyway, I thought Mo was fine in this game. He wasn't great. Defensively, he was okay. Had some nice moments. But he was the quietest of the starters by a lot. The 4 guys beyond him were all really good for the Hawks in this game. So we'll start with Risacher. 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. He was 2 of 6 on 2, which isn't great, but 5 of 9 from 3. Big third quarter, obviously, that was the biggest thing. It was weird how little he played in the first half, but I thought he looked good when he was out there. He defends looks like a guy who is a foundational piece. Nothing surprising there if you watch the Hawks for the last few months, but look good in the game. I have a stat now that I wanted to share at some point, and I'll do it. It's a good time to do it right now. So, in the 13 games, basically, since the All-Star break, in which the Hawks have had Trae, Dyson, and Onyeka all available, they've played 274 minutes together. That's the Hawks' second most used 3-man lineup. So they're playing a lot together for obvious reasons. They're starting together. And right now, with their current personnel without Jalen, their top 3 players are Trae, Dyson, and Onyeka. They played, almost 300 minutes together. It's not a super huge sample size, but not a small one either. And I say all that to say, the Hawks have a plus 13.5 net rating with Trae, Dyson, and Onyeka on the court. Now, part of that's juiced by today, which I will certainly acknowledge they were dominant in this game. But even if you remove today, it was plus 10. The Hawks are playing really well when their best players are playing right now, even without Jalen. Now, that means the bench units are not particularly great because obviously the Hawks are not winning every game right now. But I think it's a good data point for the future that trio of your starting backcourt and your starting center are functioning really well together, and that's showing up to me in the eye test and also in the box score, etc. All that said, Okongwu was really good in this game. 15 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. He was 2 of 4 from 2, 3 of 6 on threes, tying a career high there. Defensively, it was not his best night, I didn't think, to be fair. But offensively, he's really been opening things up. And also, he's much better than Don Barlow is defensively. So it's night and day there to some degree. Dyson was awesome inside the arc. He was 9 of 10 on twos in this game. Also had 3 steals, 7 assists, 22 points. Dyson was awesome in this game. Full stop. How about this stat? Dyson, and this actually made its way to NBA.com today, the national site. Dyson now has more steals this season, total steals, with 13 games left, than any player has had in a full season in the NBA since 2009. 2009. That's a long time, and he already has that record. It's going to keep piling up and piling up, hopefully, as long as he stays healthy, knock on wood. But he's been dominant this year defensively. It was awesome offensively in this game as well. And then Trae Young, 31 points, 8 assists, 3 steals. He was 6 of 11 on twos, 5 of 9 from 3, 4 fourth of line. Just a dominant game from Trae as well. Like, he had one bad stretch in the second quarter where he had back-to-back turnovers that were pretty bad, but he only had 4 in the whole game and 31 points on 22 possessions. Like, he was really good. So the trio, like I would say the quartet, if you want to throw Zach in there as well, they were really, really good. And all 4 of those guys were plus 25 or better in the game. And that showed, I think, if you watch this one, they were pretty much in control anytime they were playing it together in this one. That is all I have on this game because, look, blowout wins are usually going to be shorter podcasts because there's not that much to talk about in a good way for the Hawks. I will say this again. I said this a little bit earlier, but the Hawks are now off until Saturday game-wise. They do have a home back-to-back Saturday and Sunday, the first of which is a difficult game against Golden State on Saturday, and then they have Philly on Sunday. The plan for the podcast, if you made it this far, is that I have already recorded a 2-part NBA draft-focused episode with my friend Ben Pfeiffer that will drop sometime on Wednesday, like afternoon-ish probably, maybe early evening, to kind of tide you over until the game that the Hawks play again on Saturday. Part of that's because the Hawks are not playing games. Part of that's because I have NCAA tournament responsibilities that I have to do in my other non-Hawks sports writing coverage. So basically, it will only be basically the weekend this week, quote unquote, for the podcast will be Thursday and Friday instead of Saturday and Sunday. Because then we'll kind of, most shows on this network and other places, but especially this network, are Monday through Friday. I like to cover the games on the weekends too, but the Hawks have a back-to-back on the weekend. So I'm basically going to take off, quote unquote, Thursday and Friday in place of Saturday and Sunday because of the NCAA tournament. But I wanted to leave you with a bunch of content. So a 2-parter coming up on Wednesday with myself and Ben Pfeiffer, a fun episode that we already talked about that, NCAA tournament stuff, NBA draft stuff, etc. Stay tuned for that. And then after that, it'll be Hawks Warriors on Saturday night. I'll be in the building for that one, and we'll have a bunch of fun covering that as always. All right, everybody, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, etc. Please follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland as well. I appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. Again, stay tuned for the 2-parter with Ben coming up on Wednesday evening. Tell your friends, and we'll see you all next time.